Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pros podcast. I'm your host, Tally Shamis. Today, I'm joined by writer Leona Lach, and we talk about how we got our agents, what happens when you query too early, and you'll want to listen until the end to hear Leona's passionate views on AI in writing. Leona is a speculative fiction author represented by Morgan Hughes at Fine Print Literary. She primarily writes fantasy, and she hosts Quest Pit along with Mina Reese. Let's talk a little bit about when we started querying. When did you start querying that first book?
I've queried a total of 4 books. My first book that I queried was 2.5 years ago, somewhere around there. And I was 18, 19 when I started querying it. So I was very young in the industry. I was also very new. I joined writer Twitter like that November, and I started querying that January. So I started querying very blindly. I didn't really know what I was doing.
As you've gone through projects and pitching them, you've picked up kind of new skills. You've learned about the industry. What are some of the key things that you'd say you'd pass on to another writer?
Even if I did query early, I learned a lot from just doing it. Being a part of the writing community helped me a lot, learning about the industry, learning about agents and manuscript wish lists. And I think even though I did feel like I jumped the gun, I definitely learned a lot about how to query and what agents were looking for really early on because of that, which ended up helping me in the long run.
Yeah. So, what would you say are some of the mistakes that you made early on? How did you know, okay, this is not what I should have been doing? Did agents tell you? Did you get that feedback from your peers in the communities that you were part of?
Yeah, it was mainly feedback from peers. I think one time I talked about I sent 30 queries, only one full request type of thing. And someone was like, "Well, that's a low request rate, so you should probably rework that query or something." And at that point, I did a lot of reflecting on the actual content of the book and the query and everything. I had a few friends that were reading it, and it was just not to the standard that I wanted it anymore. And so it definitely came from community, and then a year after I stopped querying it, an agent rejected it for word count purposes. Oh, so I wasn't even in industry standard for the word count either. I learned a lot about industry standard while doing the querying, and writing community actually helped me realize this is actually way more intense than I thought it was, which helped a lot going forward.
Where have you found your writing friends, your supports? Where have been the best sources that you might recommend others look?
Yeah, I am fairly active on Twitter, especially when it was Twitter. But I met a lot of my friends through pitch events or also just reaching out to one another. My best friend Mina is one of us tweeted, "I wish I could make writing friends, but I'm so awkward and I'm very bad at keeping conversation." And then we've talked every day since then. And then, of course, there's Discords that I'm still active in, and we end up really enjoying people's work and ended up getting close because of this thing that someone wrote about. And so for me, it was Twitter and Discord.
That's awesome. And I think that some people in the industry might say you have to grow your social media following in order to get published. I think that if you look at social media as a way to build a community and make friends, that's probably a better approach than going into it just trying to get numbers.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I think also the numbers come with being active in the community. The purpose shouldn't be you're going out of it, you're going out to get published. I don't think that actually contributes to the majority of people who are published. My agent does not care if I'm active in social media or not. It is very much my choice to be active in the community. And I also think that my greatest writing friends I've met through the community. So I think it really helps to get beta readers and critique partners. Social media helps to do that part of the industry, not really the publishing aspect of it, I guess.
I completely agree with that. And it's actually funny, when I was chatting with my agent when we were having our offer call, I mentioned social media and she asked, "Are you active on any social media outlets?" And I said, "Well, I have a couple of thousand followers on TikTok. I have a 100,000 or so on Twitter, so nothing big, but I do have close friends that I've made on those outlets. And she said, "Oh, that's really good. That's exactly what we want. We want that community." So, I think you're right on the mark saying it's not about numbers, it's about actually connecting with people, being active, and enjoying yourself. If you're signing on to Twitter and you hate it, what's the point?
I totally agree. I think find the place that you like being active, find the place that you like the people in your community and be active on there. I don't like posting on TikTok very much because I could hit the wrong audience and just get like nasty people in my comments. But like I am super active on Twitter because I feel like everybody's, at least in the community that I've built, is really chill. We're just posting whatever we want. I think that choosing the social media that you enjoy the most will make it more impactful for you, because hating going on social media will just make it miserable for you. It'll become a chore, and you don't really want anything in writing to become a chore, because then you'll start hating your actual writing.
Definitely. There's Instagram, there's TikTok, there's Twitter, there's Blue Sky, there's Discord. You can't do everything. You just can't have a presence everywhere. So I think that if you pick and choose and you enjoy what you're doing, then, you can just sign on, have fun, vent. It's really interesting thinking about how you had 4 different books that you were querying. And I wonder why that last book that you got your agent with was successful versus your previous projects. Like, do you think it's how you were pitching it, or do you think it's the actual material of the project?
I think it was definitely content of books. I don't think it was necessarily pitching. Technically, my third book also got an offer that I ended up stepping away from. So my third book was also successful. But I think that my second book that I queried had a really, like, high concept, but I'm rewriting it currently. I didn't think the writing was where it should have been. Um, the third book I is also with my agent right now, actually, and so that one we're also currently looking at putting on submission. The content of it was really hot and popular. It was vampire romance, and I had written it a year before it became a trend, or became trendy. Agents were really interested in it. The request rate was really high for that book. My fourth book was really quick in the trenches. I was not expecting that. It was like a month that I was querying. I think that my query letter was a good hook. It was definitely a good hook. I had to um, rewrite like the first 2 chapters, so I think that the beginning might not have hooked agents as well as the query did. But I do think that the content of that book was very exciting, and also, I think that the fact that Bone Collector is lower YA might have appealed to agents, because I think that editors are kind of looking for not so much new adult anymore. It's more so people are trying to find the 15-year-old protagonist right now. So I think that might have helped me a lot with that one.
Yeah, it's funny. We actually had a very similar journey. So, with this book that I'm currently editing to go on submission that got me my agent, same thing. It was so fast how it happened. And I think that it's because my query letter was quite strong. And I actually ended up completely rewriting my beginning. My book is adult. It's about an art competition, and it started in an art school. And so the feedback I was getting is because it's in a school, this positions it like YA. It sounds more like YA. It's also horror. So, I wanted to up the horror a bit instead of having it start at a school, which can be scary for some. I think my query letter, I think that the way that you position your book and the hook is what gets you the interest really early. And then if your pages deliver, that's what actually gets you the offers. And,
Yeah.
you just need that one offer to come in. And then as soon as my first offer came in, it was like full request,
Yeah.
full request, full request, just pouring in, and offer, offer, offer. So it was a really exciting time. So in terms of querying and how you pick the agents that you're going to be querying, how was that process? Were you choosing agencies and then seeing which agents fit best with your work? Did you kind of query really broadly?
I love Query Tracker. I was on there a lot looking for fantasy agents specifically, and then I would like basically add all of the fantasy agents to my list initially. And then I would go in, look at all of their manuscript wish lists, narrow down from there. I would then narrow down from like reputation, I guess. Do I know this agency? Have I heard of this agency? Who do they represent? I was also like querying like newer agents too, because I think that a lot of newer agents have like a a hunger. So I think what I was doing was like I wasn't necessarily looking completely at track record like of sales because there were like new agents in my mix as well. The agency someone is at helps immensely while you're on sub, and also when you're on submission helps with sub rights, and so I think that that helped a lot with my decision. For Bone Collector, I queried quite a few people every week. I was doing like 10 people a week ish. And I don't necessarily know why I was going so broadly, but the query was successful. Like I would be getting full requests and then I would send more queries because I was like, well, if it's a successful query, then I should maybe throw my net out a little wider. I don't think I was very choosy with my agents, my first or my second and third book. I don't think I was very choosy. And I think that's why I ended up like having to decline an offer. But also, like, the call really determined if I was going to decline that offer or not. So,
Again, it just sounds like our writing journeys, our querying journeys were so similar. Like I felt very much the same thing. So I queried one book prior to, right now it's called The Color of Blood, but that's going to change. But I queried one book prior to that when it was a Fey romantasy. So obviously super oversaturated industry, but I got interest. I ended up with an offer as well that I declined. And I think that's because for that book, I think I queried, I don't know, probably 150 agents. It was wild. I sent my query to absolutely everyone. If they accepted romance, if they accepted fantasy, they were getting my query. And I don't think that was necessarily the best strategy because, I mean, yes, I was sending it to agents that I wouldn't necessarily work with just because I wanted it out there and it wasn't getting the type of response I wanted. So I thought, let's just send it out to more. But I think that the best advice that I would give to someone is look at your content. If you are sending it to, hundreds of agents and not necessarily getting that response, maybe there is something you need to work on either in your query letter or in your book. And with my second book, I think that I'd figured out some pitfalls in terms of my storytelling, obviously pitfalls in terms of my query letter. And it's funny because when I started querying that one, I had all these ideas for who I wanted to work with. I was really only sending it to agents that I would want to work with. And I was also saying, I want a smaller agent at a large agency because they'll have the connections, but they'll be hungry and they'll have time for me. And I won't have to compete with, celebrity clients. But then when the offers started coming in, I started questioning everything. So I ended up with 4 offers, and one of them was from a very big agent at a very, very big agency. And all of a sudden, this strategy that I'm thinking, I want a smaller agent who'll have time for me. I'm thinking, wait, is that really the best way to go? And I think that at the end of the day, I did make a choice that makes me very happy. But I mean, I don't know if you felt the same way, but during that offer period, I was questioning everything.
so my situation now is really weird because Morgan is a dream agent for me. And the fact that I ended up with Morgan is really great. I can't really talk about the circumstance of why we were matched together, but Morgan basically asked for my work to look at. And then we ended up having a call together. And she was like, I would love to represent you long term. And so I really connected with Morgan. We've talked before while I was querying like other books. She requested my second book, messaged me on Twitter and was like, hey, I'd be really interested in seeing this. And she also has a smaller list. So I knew she'd have time for me and she's very dedicated and she's very like good at her job. So I'm very happy with where I landed. But I was looking for like smaller lists. I wanted someone to have time for me because I also think that I'm a very impatient person. If it's taking a really long time to get edits back, I'm like a little nervous. Like maybe I would really love like someone who could dedicate a lot of time to me. And I feel like Morgan dedicates so much time to each of her clients. So I'm really happy to be where I'm at.
100. I feel like I'm interviewing myself because everything completely felt impatience. Are you kidding me? I signed with my agents on Friday. That's when my offer period ended. I'm co-represented. I haven't announced yet who I'm represented by, but so I'll announce that when we go on sub, I think. But I signed with them on a Friday. And then by next week, Wednesday, I had the edit letter in hand. So I was like, this is it. This is what I wanted because I am the same, especially in the publishing industry where, once you go on sub, you're going to have to wait 6 months to hear back from the editors. So I want to get out there as soon as possible. But I do want to ask you about the time between getting an agent and going on sub, your edits and whatnot. But I'm going to go through the rapid fire questions. First off, what did you do while you were waiting to hear back from agents?
I started writing another thing. That's always been my go-to. I don't want to freak out about this, so I'm going to start writing another query and another book, and this is what I'm preparing for if this doesn't work out. I'm very much that type of person. Like, I'm almost going on submission. I'm done with edits. Like, it's to my agent now, and I'm like, what do I do? And I'm technically taking a writing break, which is not me. And so I'm writing a short story. I sent a pitch to my agent for my next book, and she was like, okay, girl, this is what I'm going to do while I'm on sub. Because if I don't, I'll freak out. So that's what I started doing. I immediately was like, I'm going to work on this next project.
I think that's really good advice to anyone that's writing and trying not to lose their minds. Small versus big agencies. Does it matter? And how did you pick your agency?
Fine Print is great. They handle everything really well. I wouldn't say they're a small agency. They're like medium sized, probably. Our VP Lauren is great. I've had a great time, just at the agency in general. They're very communicative. They're very kind. They do a lot of co-agenting, so there's a lot of support. Big agencies have a lot of great sub rights, have a lot of great connections, but small agencies, again, the time dedicated to you, the effort dedicated to you. So I'm not really sure where I stand. I don't think I don't think it really matters
Yeah.
necessarily.
Well, you got the best of both worlds, so. Let's talk about R&Rs. You mentioned that you had one
Mhm.
that's a revise and resubmit, where an agent basically gives you feedback and asks you to resubmit your work. Can you talk
Mhm.
a little bit about how that was for you?
Yeah, I've had a few. I had two on my second book, none of which worked out. My third book, I did an R&R and it turned into an offer. I actually really liked that R&R. It was a great revision. It helped a lot with the story. My opinion on R&Rs is you need to have like an edit letter given back to you. You need to have maybe a call with that agent. Like, I think there needs to be a level of commitment from the agent for you to commit to an R&R. um, I sometimes it's just not worth the time. Sometimes it's very subjective and you'll get another rejection from a different agent that cited something completely different, or cited that they liked the thing that this other agent wants you to revise. I'm glad I did my R&Rs, but I also think that like you need to be choosy with what you revise and what you resubmit. Sure.
Definitely, especially in such a subjective industry. And I think that in an R&R, the agent's asking you to do a lot of work based on their vision. And
Mhm.
I think that you're completely right that they owe it to you if they're asking for that commitment to give you some guidance on what exactly it is they're looking for. So you're not just going into it blind and trying to make edits to something that maybe doesn't need to be changed.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Now you mentioned that you host a pitch contest or a pitch. What is it? What do they call
I
them? Pitch event?
Pitch events, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like the word, like, contest in general because this isn't supposed to be competitive, and, I'm a very competitive person, but I like framing anything as competitive in this industry actually ends up making it harder to make friends. I think that so as a pitch event organizer, uh, we started out doing it specifically for hype and for community, and we invited agent and editor and publisher participation. I mean, I got my agent from cold querying, but Morgan had messaged me like 2 years ago, like, could you submit to me from like a spontaneous pitch? Sometimes I think it's worth it to create connection with an agent, but at the same time, like a lot of my full requests for Bone were cold queries. Participate in pitch events because you like doing it, because you want to create community. And I think that the likes from industry professionals is just a little sprinkle on top.
Yeah, and it's so interesting getting a feel of everyone's stories and seeing what's out there. That's what I love about the pitch events. I also think that, it's so wonderful to meet people in person and do conferences or whatnot. But for a lot of us, it's really expensive. We live far. I'm in Canada. So there's not that much here. And it's just really nice to have an option when you can't actually do something in person to meet people still online. I guess along that vein, does having connections help in the writing industry? If
I'm sure it does help. I don't know anyone in the industry really. I do think that this is one of the only creative industries that you can like break into without being having any nepotism involved. It's like that makes it harder because there's so many people trying to do it. But I definitely think that you can do it without having any connections.
Yeah, I think so too. It's nice because I came from law. In that industry, I think that connections really matter, especially if you're going into corporate law, more competitive fields like that. And I did find that in writing, it was kind of refreshing that you can enter into the industry yourself. You can break in just through a query letter. But I will say it's very, very hard to find mentorship when you're just starting out in this industry. I found in law, there were so many different organizations that I joined also after I had gained some experience to offer mentorship, and you can really get that guidance even through your school. And maybe it's different for people that have an MFA where they do have a school that can connect them with others, but I found it was really tough to find any mentorship and guidance.
Yeah, I do wonder about that. Like, there are like mentor events and internship programs, but it again it's like a submission process. I'm in like medicine. It's similar to like the law mentorship. Like to get into research labs like is really important and that ends up being your mentorship. I really do like I agree. It's kind of hard to find mentorship in the writing community. Like some of my friends I consider like mentors in a way, but there's not like an easy program to just like start out.
And even with the mentorship programs that you can apply to, I actually was fortunate enough to be accepted into one last year. So that was fantastic. But I mean, there are a handful of these programs that have maybe 10, 20 mentors at the high end, and there are thousands and thousands of people writing. Okay, so that wraps up our rapid fire questions, but let's talk a little bit about the stage that we're both in right now, in between landing an agent and going out on submission. So what has that been like for you editing, preparing for submission?
Yeah, so my friends call it like agent land. Morgan was like, if you find any editors that you think would be interested, if you think that you would connect with anyone, send me a list. During pitch events, she texted me any likes today, and I was like, "You're so cute." But yes, what I have kind of been doing is just like looking at manuscript wish lists and stuff like that. I think I do not know what to do while I'm in this like in between stage. And I don't know how I'm going to react when I'm on submission. I don't know. Like I'm trying to prepare for it, like learning from other people, taking time to ask my friends how it went for them and how it's going for them and everything. But oh, I'm kind of afraid. I'm like, a little nervous. So
I
we'll see.
know. I know what you mean. But what were your edits like? Like, how long did that editing process go on for after you started working with Morgan? Did you have rounds of editing back and forth?
Um, it was one edit letter that had like line edits within it kind of like she went through the document and would comment on any lines that she thought like needed rewording, and then she also sent me an edit letter which was like more of the developmental side of things. I'm very quick when it comes to revisions. The rewriting aspect was probably the longest part because writing in general can take a little while, but it was very easy from there on to edit from the rewrites because that framed the rest of the story. It took me 3-ish weeks, 4 weeks to edit. And that was the only round of editing we really needed. And so now it's just prep for submission. And then also my third manuscript that Morgan had been interested in has editor interest. So we're planning on going on submission with that at the same time because they're different genres, different age categories. So I'm most likely going to have to do like small edits on that. That was the one with the revise and resubmit. So I feel like it already had the developmental edit, and I think Morgan like thinks that too. Editing is probably my least favorite part of the process, but I also know that it makes the story better. I just while I was editing, I was like, what if I'm making it worse? And that was like a time for me. And then I had friends read through it. I think it ended up, like, being okay, but I was definitely like, "I really hope I'm not making this worse than it was before."
I feel that it's tough. One fear that I have is, well, what if certain people think that these changes are good, but an editor might think, oh, well, no, I don't
Yeah,
like that aspect.
yeah.
And you mentioned editor interest. Congratulations. Was that through a pitch event?
Yes, so there is some through pitch events. I will follow editors on Twitter sometimes, and I've been followed back, and then they'll like one of my tweets. One of them at the beginning when I was first signed with my previous agent, it was like immediate. They would like my announcement, and then they emailed my agent.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. It's totally aside, but every time I take part in one of these pitch events, I have such a hard time sifting through the likes. And I
Oh,
didn't realize that if you control F, it only shows you what's on the screen at the moment. So I was control Fing and not looking at all my likes and oh my gosh,
yeah.
technicalities. But so you mentioned that your previous book, the vampire one, you happened to write it right on the cusp of a trend before that trend really materialized. Do you find even elements of your stories, do you find that you're looking at trends and trying to incorporate them? Or is it all just kind of your thoughts? And if you collide with a trend, then even better?
Yeah. I end up writing very commercial plots. That's just how I work. I have sort of literary prose, so I've been considered upmarket before. For Bone Collector, I was not even thinking about trends. I was just thinking about what I wanted to say to myself as a 15-year-old. I actually have no idea how that story came into fruition. I started outlining it and it turned into what it became. But I don't think that it really follows any trend. And also, not that it's anti-trend, but what's really popular right now is the older protagonist in YA, and I really wanted to do something different than that. Um, I what I think of the most when I think of trends is like Victoria Aveyard is doing Tempest right now, and so now I think that like, ocean stories are going to become very popular. She like, wrote it while the trend was becoming popular, so I was like, maybe I should just write that because of trend. But also at the same time, it comes so quickly and leaves so quickly. It's hard to like navigate trends. It usually is very quick, and so if you don't write it really quick you're not going to end up making the trend on time. And that's why you shouldn't really write to trends. You should just write whatever you want to write. I feel like the longest standing trend has been romantasy, and it's always fun, but you also need like something unique that the publisher is interested in and also readers are going to be interested in.
I've seen that water trend as well, and I think that there are two issues with writing to trend. First off, as you mentioned, by the time you finish writing it, the trend will have moved on. But also, if you are writing to a trend that so many other people are writing as well, there's a lot more competition versus if you're writing something more unique or if somebody is looking for that story, then, you immediately stand out as opposed to 10 other stories like yours being pitched at the same time. So it's tricky. It's really tricky. I actually thought that maybe the water trend was because the next Pirates of the Caribbean movie is coming out.
I had no idea that was a thing. Oh
I
my
think
gosh.
it's coming out next year, maybe.
I thought they were done with that.
I hope I'm not lying to you. I
Oh,
think I heard that.
no,
I
I'm going
think
to
I
look it
did.
up.
But the water trend is so funny because I've seen it. Even one of my close friends is querying right now a water book, and it's just there's
Yeah.
so much competition.
Oh my gosh, it is coming out. Margot Robbie's in it. I think it was big trend in the industry is like dark academia or like competition academia, always a school. I really like the school setting, so I'm not mad about it. I'm like looking at my bookshelf now. I'm like, I think that dystopian's coming back.
Mhm.
I think that that is going to be a really quick trend though, because I don't think dystopian lasts very long because people get like upset about it after a certain period of time. They're like, well, I'm tired of depressing books. I don't know. I think that certain trends are easy to write to, certain trends are not.
Yeah. And it's also tricky to kind of adapt a book to a trend because trends have certain vibes that you need to match in order for it to feel cohesive. And so, yeah, just going back and editing a book that was written for something else, not
That
necessarily the easiest thing.
yeah. Like big overhaul developmental edits are so hard for me because I'm like, how do I add an entire subplot when I didn't want to? like, like editors do that a lot. They're like, this would hit really hard. That's what I'm afraid of on submission. I'm like, they're gonna make me do something. Yeah.
We'll have to record a follow-up episode after we're on submission and talk about how that's gone.
Yeah, me shaking. Like it's not gonna be good. But
Well, speaking of not good, I want to get to our last topic that I'm very excited to talk to you about because you wrote a wonderful Substack post on this.
Thank you
And
very much.
it is AI in writing. We all have friends, I'm sure, that come to us and that say things like, well, why are you writing your entire book yourself? Why don't you just pop some prompts into ChatGPT? And what do you say to these people?
If everybody could see my face right now.
Well, yeah, it's really tough, right? How do you explain to people that aren't necessarily as, steeped in all of the information as we are in the writing industry, why AI is so harmful and why it shouldn't be used?
Yeah. Ugh. Oh my god. Okay. So the reason I wrote the Substack is because I am so passionate about this. As someone who also works in STEM and does research in STEM, I even hear like AI discussions with my PI, and I was overhearing him talking to a fellow researcher recently, and the fellow researcher was like, "Why are we feeding our stuff into AI? It doesn't make any sense. The information is just not going to be relayed properly. There are things that it can be good for like biomedical engineering, and like there are certain things that it can be helpful with. It can also just plagiarize like no other, and it doesn't have any repercussions for it. And I think that like generative AI, it doesn't help you in any way. I'm pretty sure it gets most of its information from Reddit. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, I don't know how people type something into ChatGPT and then don't then go look it up to make sure it's correct. Just do a Google search at that point. And also, it, it's just so environmentally unfriendly, impacts minority groups. It gets me so peeved. I've always been a creative person, I've always enjoyed creative pursuits. The work is the reason you enjoy a creative pursuit. So I am like constantly trying to make people understand how harmful it is and also that it makes you look bad. The products that I've seen that are AI generated are just not good. That is also what bothers me. I went like viral for one of my AI tweets like a while ago. And then my response to that tweet was, it looks like people just don't love the game anymore. It looks like you just hate writing. I look to the like Audra Winters situation whenever I think of this too, because at least she didn't use AI. And also like she was really passionate about her work, and that's why people supported her. So like if you produce your work using AI, you're not passionate about it, people will notice.
I feel very similarly. I think that the only way that you can improve as a writer is by writing, reading and
Mhm.
writing. And
Right.
if somebody else writes for you, you're not improving, you're not flexing that muscle. What's the point? You're stagnant. If you want to work out to get in shape, but working out is too hard for you, so you just watch videos of other people working out.
Literally, because I don't get it. Read craft books, read actual books, read recommendations, read comps, like read all of these things so that you can get better in the thing that you are passionate about. I don't know. Maybe it's just because like I love writing so much that I'm like I genuinely want to get better. And if people recommend me books, if people recommend uh, certain craft videos or uh, practices, stuff like that, like if people recommend you do certain things, you should do them to get better. I think that's why I didn't necessarily freak out too much about like querying, or why I think I'm gonna be like okay if I don't sell a book the first time around. The end goal is to be published author. But I think right now my highest priority is that I'm getting better.
Something that I've found really interesting, and I need to look up the specifics, this one author who's very famous, it might have been someone like Mark Twain, took a few books that he really loved, and this was back in the time of typewriters, and typed out the entire books so that he would absorb some of those turns of phrase that the authors that he really loved were using. And I think that that's actually so interesting in a time of AI where what you're asking is for AI to steal from other writers and insert it into your writing without you actually learning any of the skills that make their writing so good. That's a really interesting alternative to take some of your favorite writers, take one of their books and just retype the entire thing so that you absorb some of their voice. And that way, when you're writing, maybe that voice will come back and meld itself with your own voice, and you can create something new that's inspired by your favorite writers without just blatantly ripping off their work.
That's actually so interesting. I haven't heard of that before. But I do see other writers like in my writing. I think that Ava Reed inspires me a lot, and like Lee Bardugo does too. Oh, I wanna do that now. That's so cool because, like, sometimes, like, the way people describe things is just so beautiful that I want to, like, emulate that. That's such a good idea. I think
Yeah,
it's Mark
okay.
Twain, maybe,
I
like,
just Googled it. It's not Mark Twain.
who
So
is it?
it was Hunter S. Thompson, and he actually
Okay.
typed up The Great Gatsby and A Farewell to Arms on his typewriter. Also, Ava
Yeah,
Reed, Lee Bardugo, 100%. Both of them influenced my writing as well. I think that they're both such good writers.
right, and you could do
Yeah.
that with, like, just a chapter or, like, a few pages if you're not, like, able to write the entire book over again.
Right? There's also been research that shows that taking notes by hand makes it so that they go into your
Right.
brain better. So I feel like I would even take passages that I love and just write them out by hand in a notebook.
Yeah. So I had, like, the same English teacher for, like, 3 years in a row in high school, and she was my creative writing teacher too, and she had us do, like, passages in the same style as a writer, like, read this and write something new in the same style. That is very similar to that, and I think that that's a really great, like, practice or strategy.
Yeah, I'm gonna start doing that. I'll make that a goal to do. Just take a passage that I really like and rewrite it or write something in a similar style.
Yeah. That's not, like, plagiarism. You're writing something new.
The AI discussion is tough, especially, with you being in medicine. I know that the 2024, what was it, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, that's based on an AI model for protein folding, right? There are applications where I think that it can be used, but I mean, you can say that about anything really. If you're reading from a book and getting inspiration from it, that's great. If you're rewriting a book and claiming that it's your own work, that's not so great.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely moral and, like, ethical issues with it too, and, like, the chemistry Nobel Prize, I actually have professors that use that, the protein folding model all the time because we didn't know how certain proteins folded for a really long time, but I feel like impact to society is also something that is talked about a lot in AI, like, what is your AI generated book that's plagiarized a whole ton of authors that were fed into this model, like, without their consent, what is that doing for society? That's actually doing worse for this worse for society because it's not your own words, it's nothing creatively impactful, and it's also harming the environment and harming certain communities that are impacted by these models.
100%. And I think that what you mentioned in terms of the costs versus the benefits to society is really what it comes down to. I was reading an article recently that mentioned that people shouldn't have dogs because dog food uses so much water. But I think that if you look at the benefits of having a dog to both us and the animal, I think that that's something that can be justified, and personally, having had a dog for basically my entire life, that's not something I'm willing to give up. When
Right.
you look at a book that's written by a script that is using so much water, is having detrimental effects on, our ecosystems, that's
Mhm.
maybe not something that you can necessarily justify when you're also being robbed of the creative growth that would come from writing your own book.
I totally agree. We could even get into, like, eating beef is, like, terrible for the environment. Not every single person can reasonably not eat red meat because of certain deficiencies. You can go into this back and forth, but ultimately, I don't think creative works have any reason to be involved in AI or generative AI. I also think that using it for any research purposes, like, specifically like college students using it for like assignments, that just makes you less independent and like it genuinely takes away your like cognitive abilities.
As a professor as well, I teach law at my university. It is so obvious when students use AI, even if, at the beginning, AI images had 6 fingers. Now they can draw hands properly, but it's still clear When I
Mhm.
know your voice, when I know how you speak in class, and you're submitting a paper that sounds nothing like you,
Right. And people will, like, put into have it sound more like me. Why don't you just write it yourself?
I just kind of fear for the generation that's growing up not knowing a world without AI. And I mean the kids that are like 5 years old now, right? That are gonna go into school and never having an education system that doesn't have AI. What
Yeah. Oh, that does concern me a lot. Well, it definitely is making people, like, not super independent, and that scares me a little bit, so,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, on that bleak note, no,
Oh,
this has been a really, really fantastic discussion. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. We definitely will have to do a follow-up, like I said, when we're on
yeah,
submission.
for sure, that'll be great, yes. I had a
Yay.
great time. Thank you for inviting me as well.
Thank you so much for joining. And thanks so much to all of you for listening to the Pros podcast. Remember to check back every Tuesday for a new episode.